Welcome to Playfully Orange, our conversation about arts and culture here in Central Florida on Thursday afternoons. My guest today is Stasha Boyd. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. I would
Welcome,
be so disappointed
Stasha.
if you didn't. So disappointed.
Well, because I've known you for decades?
Exactly.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, okay. So we've both been around for a while. I think you have been around since birth, though, or you were born where, in Ocala?
Yes, I'm from Ocala. I'm a third generation Florida native. So I've been in Central Florida most of my life, with the exception of the 1 year I was in Up With People and the 2 years I was at FSU.
All right. And were you always planning to be a theatrical person involved in the arts?
Once it kind of became clear to me when I was about 15 years old that is absolutely what I needed to do, then from that point forward, yeah, it was either going to be acting, performing, and now it's writing, producing, directing for a lot of the projects that I work on.
In those years, several decades ago, you were performing at a number of the theaters that were here in town at that time.
Yeah. I moved to town in, I think it was October of 1988. And within 2 weeks, I was cast in A Flea in Her Ear at the Civic Theater. And from that point on, it was just show after show after show until about the time I got married in 98. And then started my own business, and my husband and I started our own business in 2002. And that kind of cut down on a little bit of the being on stage in Central Florida.
And that business was about providing audio descriptions for museums and that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of it. Our main company, Q Media Productions, we produce interpretive, multi-language, and accessibility tour content for museums, galleries, state parks, national parks. So essentially, if you've ever been to a museum and taken an audio tour or a mobile media tour, that's what we do. We produce that kind of content. So the interpretive part, which is the storytelling, then taking that story and translating it into any language that is appropriate. We've done everything from Spanish to Lakota. And then about 12 years ago, we started working in something called audio description. And audio description is it's accessibility, audio description in American Sign Language. So the way sign language helps people who cannot hear or who are deaf or hard of hearing access information, the audio description is the same thing for people who are blind or have low vision.
And you have hired actors to do this. You've been a source of income for some actors?
Yes, primarily voice talent, and also local writers. We've worked with several folks that have been in our community. Again, I have known people around here almost as long as you have. And so whenever we would need additional writers or directors, especially in directing our foreign language and multi-language projects, I am not qualified to direct in Spanish. I am not qualified to direct in French or Russian. So we would hire people who are local to provide that for us.
How did you move from being involved with the live theater world to this world of producing those recorded?
Fell in love. So back in 95, when my now husband and I started dating, we've always been museum people. And of course we had no money because he was a musician and I was an actor. And we both worked at theme parks and various day jobs. And so we would always go to museums and we would always take the audio tours. So, and it didn't matter what the museum was. It could have been everything from Alcatraz out in California to Ellis Island, and he would listen to them for the technical aspect of it, for how they were produced and how they were created. I, of course, would listen to them for the writing and the storytelling and the voices and the performances, and we just would do that part for fun. And then after 9/11, my husband and I, we had gone to, at that point we were married, we were at a museum. And it was it's an airplane museum. And actually, it was Fantasy of Flight down here in Polk City. And we're walking around, and they had the little tags. It's like the plane wings are this wide, and the engine has this much torque. And Mike, my husband, he knows everything there was to know about World War II aircraft. So he's telling me all these stories about the planes and who flew it. And we were saying, you know what? This place needs one of them audio tours. I wonder who does that. How hard could it be? And so that's when we started our business. And so we looked into it. By 2002, we'd started the company. And since then, it's been everything from our first client was actually the Palaschik Museum here in Winter Park. And since then, it's grown everything from Kennedy Space Center, Mount Rushmore, a lot of national parks, a lot of, we just work on a project right now for Holocaust Museum Houston. And that one was interpretive, multi-language, and audio description. So it's grown a lot.
Do you still get out to see theater in the area?
Yes, I actually live in Winter Garden, so I'm very close to the Garden Theater. I love going, and we used to take my mother-in-law, my in-laws, when they were still snowbirding back and forth to any of the theaters because they loved theater. Mad Cow, went to a lot of Mad Cow shows, brought him here to the Garden Theater, of course, which is just one of my favorite spaces at this point. Obviously, spent a lot of time at Fringe Fest. I love Fringe Fest. And so those are the main things. And anytime we get a chance to get out.
What do you think is missing?
Well, and that's kind of why, you and I reconnected because of my connection with the blind and low vision community, basically throughout the country, also here in Central Florida, the Orlando Fringe Fest reached out last year because they wanted to develop an audio description program, which is basically how do you provide description of a theatrical performance for people who are blind or have low vision. So we worked together, came up with a program, got it launched and on its feet for one of the Fringe Fests, but kind of realize that it's like, that's a real heavy lift for one theater. Essentially, you need to have a trained audio describer. You have to have equipment. You have to have all of these things to make this theater, accessible. And because of my background, doing audio description, knowing the blind community, working with the blind community, I think that it's like right now, almost zero. I think probably like Fringe, the Shakespeare Fringe Festival, and a little bit at Dr. Phillips are trying to provide audio description. Otherwise, blind and low visual residents of Orange County and Central Florida, they can't go to the theater at all because there's nothing for them. There's no description there. So we're trying to start the Central Florida Audio Description Initiative to make the local theater as accessible for blind people as it is for every other member of our community.
And this is a bit more complicated than like recording something that when you're going to Mount Rushmore, you put on your headset, because it has to flow with the timing of what is actually happening on stage, which can change because it's live.
Exactly. And that's the whole purpose. It's like the idea, I've actually had people say, well, why would a blind person want to go to the theater? And I'm like, well, why do you want to go to the theater? When you can stay home and watch TV, it's to be part of the audience, to be part of that energy, and to experience that kind of storytelling. And so just because a person can't see, the same way just because a person can't hear, doesn't mean they don't want to enjoy and embrace that part of our lives and our culture and our art. So, and the complexity of it, if it's a live performance, because there's different types of audio description. You'll find it in films and television. You'll find it audio describing extemporaneous events like parades and inaugurations. But in the theater and in arts in general, like dance and opera, basically you have a person who's a describer, and they'll usually be back in the booth somewhere or whatever, and they will be describing in between the bits of dialogue or before the show starts what's going on the stage. And then in the house, the person who's blind or low vision, they're going to have a headset, a receiver on, and they're going to be able to hear that description. And so they're able to keep up. And the important thing too is to think about it. They're going to be there with a family member or a friend, like we all go to the theater with our family and our friends. But now their friend is no longer having to sit there and whisper in their ear what's happening on stage. The friend gets to enjoy the show too. The person who's watching it gets to enjoy the show. The person who's blind gets to watch and see and experience the show through audio description.
Is part of the training then learning how to insert some description so as not to cover up the dialogue?
Yes. And because description itself, one of the most important things, there's different elements to it. first of all, you have to be able to observe, because you realize just how much massive amount of information we're taking in through our eyes already. So the describer has to be able to edit and say, okay, I'm going to describe this and not that. This is important. Then they've got to be able to describe it in such a way that they're not inserting their own opinion of what's happening. They're not telling the people that something is beautiful. They're describing the thing and let the person describe if that's beauty or not. And that's a training. It's almost like, you think about improv and how you're trained to have the yes and way of thinking about things and interacting with a performer. In audio description, you are coming to the conclusion, how do I say what I see without telling somebody what to think about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds interesting, and we certainly wish you the best on this venture to develop that for our community and wherever else you go. You seem to be about scaling up to the nation, which is great. And I thank you for being here today on our Playfully Orange.
Can I plug the website if people want more information about it?
Yes.
Yes. If you're interested, if you're a theater leader, if you're a theater enthusiast, if you're an arts enthusiast, go to www.cfadi for Central Florida Audio Description Initiative, cfadi.com, and you can learn more about what we're trying to do.
Super. Again, thank you, and thank you for listening, everyone. I also do Diverse Orange on Tuesday afternoon. So each week I get to talk to interesting people in our community, and I'm blessed. See you. Bye.
Thanks for having me, Terry. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.